into CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. Today, President Donald Trump marks his first 100 days in office. He is on his way to Michigan right now and will celebrate his administration's accomplishments with two big events. First, the president will be speaking at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. That's expected to happen in just a few minutes from now. And tonight, the president will hold a rally with his supporters. His visit comes as CBS News has learned the president will sign an executive order today, easing the 25% tariff for steel and aluminum for automakers. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady standing by to break down where the U.S. economy stands 100 days into Trump's term. But first, we begin with CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, live in Warren, Michigan, with more on tonight's rally. Hello, Ed.
Jill's good to see you.
So as we talk about the first 100 days, let's get into the trade deals, what we're hearing from the White House about where talks stand right now. I know it's very loud where you are right now, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, look, the president announcing this morning that they're in essence tweaking some of the tariffs that automakers in this country are going to have to pay. There's still going to be ones on foreign and imported autos, still on imported auto parts, but there's going to be modifications to tariffs on some of the supplies that those auto parts makers might need, like steel and aluminum. They're retroactive as well, so automakers potentially getting some money back. The big three based here in Michigan, others that make cars in the United States like Volkswagen and BMW, quite pleased with this. And yet it still means that money will be spent, more money will be spent by customers as they try to buy vehicles across the country.
Ed, let's talk about trade deals and where things stand right now.
So earlier today, the president signaled that there may be some progress soon with India, South Korea as well. And the Treasury Secretary held a rare early morning press briefing at the White House where he was asked about this. Take a listen.
The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that, over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
As the national anthem is sung here, Jules, the president set to appear in a few hours to address supporters on the 100th day of his presidency. He's here in Warren, Michigan, because this is a part of the state, a Republican part of the state, that helped deliver the electoral votes of this one and all the other battlegrounds and put him back in the White House.
All right, Ed O'Keefe. Ed, thank you. We'll be standing by for his comments. We're also watching Wall Street. The closing bell rang just moments ago. The Dow landed in the green. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us live now. Hi, Kelly. So walk us through the U.S. economy, where it stands 100 days into Trump's second term.
So look, I think the way to think about this is the hard economic data is still solid. So inflation is coming down, right? He inherited an environment that was 3% when it comes to the consumer price index. It's down to 2.4%. The labor market has also remained solid. It's the soft data and also investor sentiment, the stock markets, that are really showing the concern about what could be coming from these tariffs. And so I, highlight the stock market because we've been on quite a roller coaster. You and I always talking at 4 p.m. It's kind of, where is it going to end? And from when the president took office to yesterday, because the market just closed, these numbers might be a little bit different, but the Dow had lost roughly 7%, the S&P 500 had lost 7%, and the NASDAQ NASDAQ had lost over 11% since he took office. And that is because there is so much uncertainty. Consumer sentiment, also another big one that is reflecting that uncertainty. We saw versus January, the outlook that consumers have for the economy, for their finances, for the labor market drop 32%. That is the biggest 3-month decline, steepest 3-month decline since the 1990 recession in January of that year. So it just speaks to the hard data, the hard economic data. We are still in a good place, but the question is what is coming and how quickly could that soft data, that consumer sentiment, impact the hard data, Jules?
Okay, so let's talk about Amazon. That's one stock that we're watching, and shares kind of dipped today. So what's going on there?
Another wild ride today for Amazon. So earlier in the day, there was a story reportedly that Amazon would, in some of the purchases that maybe you or I make, add a line when you check out, and it would tell you how much of the price increase was coming from tariffs. And so the White House, in their press briefing at 8:30 a.m., Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt really called this out and said that this was a hostile move. Very quickly, Amazon confirmed to CBS News that this was something that had been considered, but that this would not be something that they just had decided to go through with, and that that's not something that we will see when we check out on Amazon. But it speaks to this larger issue that companies like Amazon, they are going to be impacted by tariffs. And so Amazon's going to report earnings this week. We are definitely very interested to see all sort of the roller coaster aside today, how they message tariffs to their investors and how they think their consumers are going to impact or be impacted by potential price increases.
Yeah, and as we talk about Amazon, UPS says it's planning to cut back on Amazon deliveries. So what does that mean? What's going on there?
So UPS reported earnings today, and this was something that they highlighted and that they had actually announced last quarter. They had decided to cut back on Amazon deliveries to focus on more what they called quality revenue and to improve their profit margins. And so this is resulting in a 20,000 layoff that they plan to do at UPS. So that's kind of isolated to that. But I mean, we are seeing the job market hasn't shown sort of a big drop off yet, but there are some cracks. We actually got job openings today, new numbers on that, and they came in lower than expected. So it does speak to this uncertainty with companies that maybe there is a pause on hiring with all of this uncertainty, Jules.
All right, thanks for keeping watch as always. Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thanks. So the federal government has spent about $220 billion more in President Trump's first 100 days in office than it did during the same period of time last year. So this despite promises to cut spending. So CBS News analyzed the Treasury Department's daily financial reports to track the money. CBS News Vice President of Data and Journalism, John Kelly, is joining us live now to break down all of these numbers. Glad you can do that for us. What are the main sources of the increase in your number crunching?
You know, the increases are really the things that we know are big ticket spending items consistently over the past decade or decades. Medicare, Social Security, and the military and veterans benefits. Those things have continued to increase as the population ages, and there are things that are intractable problems and issues that many Congresses and many administrations have struggled to get a handle on, and they increase at large numbers that are really hard to catch up with if the cutting is happening in other areas. And then the biggest one, the one that's growing exponentially, is the payments to pay down Treasury securities, so paying off the national debt. The amount that has gone up just in this first few months is $30 billion versus just a year ago. That amount has doubled in just 3 years. And that's a product of the debt itself growing, but also the interest rate struggles that we've seen recently that are affecting consumers across the country. Those also affect the government's debt.
Now, DOGE claims they cut $160 billion in funding. So what did you find?
Sure. We looked at the claims that the Department of Government Efficiency has made, and we did that in partnership with CBS News Confirmed, and we were looking to understand, how much of that is real, how much of that can be documented. And the department has a website where they cite the numbers, and those numbers, only about 40%, less than 40% of what has been claimed as saved is itemized in a way that you can really check into it. But more than that, we wanted to be able to compare that against where the cuts were happening, and they're not happening in those big spending areas we just talked about that make up about 2/3 of the government spending. They're also really small in comparison to, say, the annual spending of the government. They make up, that 160 billion would be about 2% of what the government spends on average over the last 5 years in 1 year. That would be like a family with, say, $10,000 in monthly bills deciding to trim their spending by $200.
All right, John Kelly. John, thank you. President Trump promised to crack down on immigration, but his administration's actions have faced a series of legal setbacks. We'll break it all down next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. A live look at Air Force One landing just moments ago at Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan. We're awaiting President Trump to attend a rally in Michigan as he departs from the plane there. The troops at the base are waiting. That's expected to happen at the bottom of the hour. We'll certainly be standing by for his remarks. As we continue to follow President Trump's first 100 days in office, he is set to tout his administration's accomplishments at a rally with his supporters in Michigan later today. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is facing more than 300 lawsuits. The topics of the suits range from LGBTQ rights to tariffs to employment and DOGE cuts. But the biggest topic is immigration. So CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joining us live now to break it all down for us. So Scott, let's talk about some of the key lawsuits right now regarding immigration and deportation.
So many lawsuits total, but yeah, those immigration suits really have become flashpoints and national causes outside of just the parties involved, one of which comes back to court with filings tomorrow. That's the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man mistakenly deported from Maryland to El Salvador March 15th, and who a judge has ordered to be returned from that Salvadoran detention center, but who the Department of Justice and the Trump administration have not returned. The judge wants more information, but the back and forth on this has become arguably one of the highest profile of all the legal battles. Then there's the broader issue of all those deportations March 15th of suspected Venezuelan foreign national gang members. A judge ordered the planes turned around midair, but that order was not followed. And since there's been this back and forth month-long argument over the use of that 18th century Alien Enemies Act emergency war power, whether it should be used again. The Supreme Court has weighed in, and you just sense that of all the things going on, all the legal battles, this one has arguably had the most prominence.
Let's talk about student visas. We understand the Trump administration is cracking down on student visas. So what are we hearing there?
That comes from the State Department, which is retracting issued visas, which it argues it's empowered to do, from students that they believe no longer deserve the privilege of having a visa due to campus unrest or participation in protests or some other alleged misconduct. There was this effort in many courthouses across the country by some of these impacted students to challenge the legality of their stripping of visas and of this potential deportation. For now, the Department of Justice has met them halfway. It's still going to move to deport some of these students, but they've given them access to their records again in the student visa system, which basically means they can't be kicked off the campus and they can still participate in classes while some of these processes move forward for some of these students. But this is an ongoing legal battle that will go past the end of this semester and go right into the summer.
Yeah, let's talk about more legal battles. So now a number of government employees let go by Elon Musk's DOGE cuts are actually suing. So what do we know about those lawsuits?
Some are succeeding and some are succeeding simply in getting pauses or temporary restorations to the job. The first wave of federal employees that DOGE, the agency operated by Elon Musk, and the Trump administration have tried to get rid of, that first wave of employees are the so-called probationary employees. They're the new ones on the job. They've only been there for months, not years or decades, or some had just recently been promoted to new positions. Administratively, those were the simpler groups of workers to get rid of. But unions and some of these workers are challenging, arguing that what the administration has done is unlawful. operating outside the powers of Congress, which may have authorized some of these agencies to be there, to be funded and be hired. This will go back and forth, but not just in one courthouse. These are being challenged in courthouses across the country in the federal system, different judges issuing different rulings. This will consume likely years to settle.
It does not happen overnight. All right, Scott McFarland. Scott, thank you so much. So our CBS morning anchor, Tony DeCopel, was at the U.S.-Mexico border and spoke exclusively with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. They talked several issues, including the recent theft of her purse, which had her driver's license and passport. But they mostly discussed the drastic change in immigration since Trump returned to the Oval Office. So let's take a listen.
If you talk to all of these agents that have been down here for years, they say it's night and day difference from where we were a year ago, that they were overwhelmed and with illegals and people that were turning themselves in because they knew that they would be released into the United States undocumented with no consequences.
And you can watch more of Tony's interview, including Noem's response to the controversial deportation cases of 3 small children born in the U.S. That'll be tomorrow on CBS Mornings. And stay with CBS News 24/7 for continuing coverage all day long of the president marking 100 days in the White House. Coming up in the next half hour, we will take a closer look at the administration's massive budget cuts on weather and climate research. We now head to Illinois, where a community is reeling after 4 people, including children, were killed when a car drove through a building holding an after-school program. This happened in Chatham. It's just south of the state's capital. CBS News.
The agony was palpable as residents in Chatham, Illinois, Monday learned the news.
Somebody rode through the daycare.
There's 4 kids on the carts up there.
And killed some kids. Those are kids.
Oh no!
Yeah, those are kids.
Oh, poor Dennis.
According to police, just after 3 p.m., a vehicle crashed through a wall at this after-school camp, hitting several people inside before exiting the other side.
I need at least 4 ALS ambulances to this location now.
State police say at least 4 were killed, including 2 7-year-olds, an 8-year-old, and an 18-year-old. All were female, while several others were injured. Authorities say 3 of the deceased were struck outside the building and another inside, leaving a gaping hole on the side of the structure. At least 6 people were transported to the hospital, 1 by helicopter. The driver was also taken to the hospital, but was not hurt.
Something like this happens, it just makes people's knees buckle. I just hope we can come out of this as a stronger community because we're very tight-knit.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker echoed that sentiment, saying, quote, "My heart is heavy for these families and the unimaginable grief they're experiencing, something that no parent should ever have to endure." State police do not believe this was a targeted attack, but they're still investigating. Ian Lee, CBS News, Chatham, Illinois.
Authorities have identified the driver as 44-year-old Marianne Akers. Officials say she is not in custody as they continue to investigate what happened. All right, jumping the map to Florida, we are hearing from a survivor of a deadly hit-and-run crash between a boat and a ferry in Florida. Stephen Whitehurst of Clearwater was among 10 people injured when it happened. He was brought to the hospital for a knee injury, but his son had to be flown in after he lost consciousness. Whitehurst documented the moments after first responders rushed aboard. He says it was chaos.
It was like a lot of broke bones and like mass head injuries, stuff like that. Just more shouting than anything for help.
One person was killed in Sunday's crash. Officials say the boat involved was later found about 3 miles away from the incident. The Coast Guard says there were 6 people on the boat, including the driver. No charges have been filed and no one has been taken into police custody. To Massachusetts now, jurors listened as the defense attorney for Karen Reed, the woman accused of killing her boyfriend, attempted to poke holes in testimony from a cell phone expert. Reed's lawyer challenged a digital forensics specialist about location data on the victim's cell phone on the night he died. The defense argues Boston police officer John O'Keefe was killed inside the home of a fellow police officer where he was attending a party and was the victim of a conspiracy involving the police. They claim he was not hit by Reed's SUV and left to die in the snow, as the prosecution argues.
And therefore, over the next few hours, according to your report, the phone of John O'Keefe could be in the house, correct?
Based on the low accuracy information, yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
A mistrial was declared in Reed's first trial last year. Severe weather hitting several states in the Midwest. Heavy rain, strong winds, and lightning rolled through parts of Minnesota. The National Weather Service will assess damage from a possible tornado in the southern part of the state. So here's a look at some of the damage, though, left behind. Destroyed homes, debris, and fallen trees. You can see right there. So we're going to bring in meteorologist Zoe Mintz to talk about the conditions. And look at these photos here, just the storm bringing in all of that. And the mess left behind, the destruction.
Yeah, over 3-inch in diameter hail, 90+ mile-an-hour wind gust, and that severe weather threat continues today, along with some very heavy rainfall to contend with through tomorrow as well. So let's take a look at what's currently going on, where the severe weather threat is, because it's very similar to the places that saw it yesterday, although yesterday was a bit farther north, where Minnesota, northern Iowa saw those tornadic activity, saw a lot of hail, and that activity currently is sitting over the central part of the United States, over the Mississippi Valley, over the Ohio River Valley, and this is where severe weather will continue to set up throughout this afternoon and evening, which is why we do have that higher and enhanced risk for severe weather up near the Great Lakes, the Ohio River Valley, and as well down near Texas. Let me put on some cities just to kind of give you all perspective. From Lubbock all the way up to Cincinnati, even including Buffalo, New York, there is that potential for severe weather. The biggest impact when it comes to large hail is going to be over near Texas. This is where hail is likely going to be over 1 inch in diameter. When it comes to those damaging wind gusts, that's likely going to be on the northern edge of the system up near the Great Lakes, where those winds could be upwards of 80 to 90 miles an hour. So again, keep that in mind throughout this afternoon and evening, as not only severe weather, but some widespread rainfall and heavy rainfall at that is going to continue to stream across basically the same locations all day today and into tomorrow. And all this moisture is coming in directly from the Gulf of Mexico. If we look at our precipitable water, you can see all of that moisture that's continuing to stream across the central United States. It's actually going to bring us the potential of some heavy rainfall, flash flooding. This area below my feet today and into tomorrow has that potential of very heavy rainfall and the potential, again, of flash flooding. If we take a look at the timing of this upcoming system, we are going to continue to see flash flooding risks today, tomorrow, and continuing through Thursday. So heavy rainfall, flash flooding, tornadic activity, large hail, and damaging wind gusts, all going to be threats throughout the rest of today and into tomorrow. So buckle down if you live in those areas. And if you don't, but you have friends and family, call them and make sure that they're weather aware.
Check on them and stay safe.
Exactly.
All right, Zoe, thank you. So Elon Musk waves a chainsaw to show he's slashing the fat in the federal government, but now the richest man in the world is on his way out. A look back on his role at the White House and what's next. Stay with us. You are watching CBS News 24/7. Moments ago, President Trump touched down in Michigan and was greeted by Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer. You can see as he is exiting the plane, Air Force One. And at the bottom of the steps there, he is greeted by Whitmer as he departs Air Force One. He will also be joined, and she will be joining him at the rally. As you can see them greeting one another as well. He'll be speaking to troops, and there they are having a conversation. These are live pics of the president. Again, he will be speaking to troops at Selfridge Air Force National Base in Michigan. And we are told that Secretary Pete Hegseth also is there as well. So as we mark the first 100 days of President Trump's second term, we also mark 100 days of Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. Musk taking a chainsaw, as you see there, to the federal government, driving efforts to shutter entire agencies and slash the federal workforce. So let's bring in tech journalist Yasmin Khorram to talk about the 100 days of DOGE and actually how Musk claims he's done okay, but how has he done so far?
Yes, so initially Elon Musk promised to cut $2 trillion from the federal government. Now that number has shrunk by a lot. What has DOGE accomplished? Let's run through some numbers. 120,000 federal employees terminated, either laid off or offered buyouts. According to the DOGE website, it says that it has saved $160 billion now. We don't have the documentation for all of that or the receipts. Keep in mind, that is less than 8% of the original $2 trillion promise. Entire agencies have been dismantled, such as USAID, CFPB. Other agencies such as the FDA, HUD, Department of Education have all been affected. Now, what's interesting here is that there's experts who warn that all of these firings and rehirings and budget slashes could actually cost taxpayers upwards of $130 billion this fiscal year alone.
So let's talk about Musk's companies. He was running the companies on top of running DOGE. So walk us through how his businesses fared through kind of this double job.
Yes, so the federal government isn't the only thing that saw its size kind of go down. Tesla was hit hard this year. So, over the past 100 days, we've seen Cybertrucks burned. There's been protests outside of dealerships. Tesla has done so bad that last week, Elon Musk got on his earnings call with his investors and assured them that he would be stepping away from DOGE, would only spend about 1 to 2 days a week starting in May, and he would become an active CEO again. I mean, things got so bad that at one point we saw President Trump parade out Teslas onto the White House and tell people to buy them in order to boost Tesla's stock price. We've also heard from cabinet officials talking about how great Tesla is. So Musk telling his shareholders last week after a really bad earnings report, first quarter, he is going to be an active CEO again. I've been talking to Tesla investors. They're not happy about that. They tell me that the damage is done. He's a controversial figure. They don't want him to return to Tesla full time.
Was there a particular turning point? You know, he had all of this momentum at the start of his administration. So 100 days in, now we kind of examine it, and now he's stepping back. He's on his way out.
Yes, there was a turning point. It was in Wisconsin. It was when Elon Musk, we all saw, he put on a cheesehead hat. He donated $20 million of his own money for this hotly contested state Supreme Court race. A Democrat ended up winning. And this is kind of where he lost a bit of muscle. President Trump loves results. We know him by now. And Elon Musk didn't deliver. The voters didn't follow Elon. It has been a whirlwind 100 days. As you said, he has a lot of other companies, SpaceX, Neuralink. 2 of his companies merged. xAI, his AI company, merged with his social media company, X. Who knows what happens there?
Right.
We should check back in another 100 days.
Okay, we will. We'll check back with you as well. All right, Yasmin, thanks so much. Also, you can read more of the 100 Days of Elon Musk through Yasmin's Substack, the Y-Axis. You can find it at yasmincorum.substack.com. A lot of good information. I read that every day. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right. Since President Trump took office, DOGE has made cuts to research funded by the NIH, or National Institutes of Health. CBS News national reporter Karen Waugh is in Houston, a city known for its medical centers and research hubs, to explain how they are being impacted.
Hey, good to be with you. So hospitals all around the country, including here in Houston, they're bracing for impact. The NIH funds all sorts of research across the U.S., things from vaccine development to finding the cure for cancer. DOGE says its NIH cuts are mostly what they call indirect costs, things like lab maintenance and support staff. But researchers we talk to say those indirect costs are the foundation, the backbone of what they do. So these researchers worry that more cuts to the NIH could impact not only their science, but also could lead to some layoffs. In one example, we got a look inside Houston Methodist's brain tumor bank, run by Dr. Bob Rastomli. He extracts brain tumor tissues during surgery, then his team studies the samples to look for treatments. They currently have 5 projects that are funded by the NIH, so they get a couple $1 million a year. If their NIH funding is cut, Dr. Rastomli says they must find another source of money to keep serving their patients as usual. Not getting that money somewhere else is not an option.
And what the short-term consequences can be of the NIH and NCI issues, I don't know. But we just have to put our nose to the grindstone and keep moving forward as best we can.
Now, Houston Methodist's total budget is about $330 million a year. About 10 to 12 million of that is from NIH grants. Now, in comparison, down the street, Baylor College of Medicine receives the most NIH funding in all of Texas. They got $326 million last year, which they risk losing this year. Now today, the Harris County attorney, along with other Houston leaders, they're filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration over these federal workforce cuts. They do worry about these mass layoffs among federal workers and also these cuts to crucial things like medical research. They're hoping their lawsuit might at least stop some of these cuts in the meantime. Back to you.
The Trump administration also made sweeping changes to the Department of Health and Human Services. CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez has the story from Nashville.
The city of Nashville is just one of many facing billions of dollars in federal cuts during President Trump's first 100 days in office. Some of the most impactful coming from the Department of Health and Human Services. It's cut more than $11 billion in federal public health funding across the country, terminating medical grants to support research and help states like Tennessee operate clinics and test for infectious diseases. The city of Nashville is now suing the department over the cancellation of grants it argues were already approved by Congress, and this cancellation, they say, exceeds constitutional authority. That suit was filed the same day HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. visited and spoke in Music City at a prescription drug industry summit addressing his past battles with drug addiction. Now, his speech was interrupted by several protesters against those funding and staff cuts to major organizations. Attendees there argue it's hurting Americans and access to health care.
Federal funding drives a lot of care and innovation, not only for the most vulnerable U.S. citizens, but also for everyday folks who maybe have different diseases or chronic illnesses. And the work that we all are doing is really important. I'd say that the people that work the hardest and work with the populations that are dealing with the most, they're always sort of feeling the brunt of it. So anytime there's sort of change or upheaval, even if some elements may end up being positive, it can be really challenging.
The public health director for Metro Nashville says he's concerned these cuts will impact funding losses on the health of the city's residents and worries the termination could impact the city's future ability to get grants approved.
As parts of the U.S. brace for more severe weather, will President Trump's cuts to one agency lead to problems alerting Americans of a potential disaster? Details next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. We continue to break down President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, has more on our polling across the range of topics, including immigration and also the economy.
At the 100-day mark, do Americans see the president doing what he promised in the campaign? Majority says they do, especially for his voters, nearly 9 in 10, saying he is doing what he promised. But how do Americans evaluate it? Well, start with a story very much about focus, and that is, you see 7 in 10 Americans, a growing number, who say so far they have not, in their mind, seen the administration put enough focus on efforts to lower prices. That's important because we know that inflation and prices have long been key concerns for Americans. And the effect that has had is the president's approval rating on handling inflation specifically has been tracking down in recent weeks. One thing to note, evaluations of the economy are different depending on often partisanship. Look at this. You've got a majority of Americans who think the track of the economy is getting worse, but for, in particular, MAGA Republicans, many of them, 7 in 10 of them, say that it is getting better. Another thing to note is at the U.S.-Mexico border. The president talked a lot about this during the campaign. Right now at 100 days, 2/3 of Americans say they think his policies are making border crossings go down. And on his deportation program, that continues to get majority approval at 56% there. I'm Anthony Salvanto at the CBS News Data Desk.
The Trump administration has also proposed sweeping changes to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA. So far, hundreds of employees have been fired from NOAA. The agency is also feeling the impact of massive budget cuts. And this comes as the latest hurricane forecast predicts this season of storms will be above average with at least 4 major hurricanes. So I want to bring in meteorologist Zoe Mintz to talk about what NOAA does and really how these cuts are affecting the National Weather Service in general.
Well, I mean, it's not just the National Weather Service. It's anybody that looks at the weather forecast. Because as a meteorologist, I don't just look at a weather forecast on my phone. I forecast the weather. So I look at data, I look at models, I look at trends, and all of that is brought to us by the National Weather Service. So less money for them means less of that data for us to get the forecast accurate. In fact, all of the action that you see on the ground, all of the alerts, all of the warnings, all of the watches, everything is issued to us by the National Weather Service. If they didn't have the money to do this, then unfortunately all these people would have no idea what kind of severe weather is on the way, from river levels flooding to severe thunderstorms. All of this, again, is brought to us by the National Weather Service. It also brings us model data as well. So when we look at the severe weather potential that's going on this afternoon, this would not be as accurate. This would not be as efficient if we didn't have money to the National Weather Service. So as something as simple as a forecast for the future, that could be impacted by these budget cuts. So let's take a look behind me and kind of show you how somebody from the National Weather Service forecasts the weather. They use what's known as a weather balloon. It's a very important piece of information that it gives us what's currently going on in the atmosphere. It's a very cheap piece of technology. It's literally a balloon and then a thermometer and some other weather data impacted on the bottom of it. This is so cheap and this is so informative when it comes to bringing us the actual information that we need when it comes to forecasting the weather. In fact, if we actually break it down by pricing, everything that the National Weather Service brings us, the data, the infrastructure, the forecast, the satellite, it costs the American taxpayer about $4 a year. That's less than 1 latte per year. And if you took a look at the return on investment, it's about 73 to 1. You get back about $292 a year. So you're only paying in $4, and the amount of information that you receive from the National Weather Service is honestly priceless. But if you were to put a price on it, it's definitely more than you end up paying. So continuing to slash the budget for them is going to continue to lessen the accuracy and the efficiency of the forecast for us as meteorologist and just for the American people. Even your weather app isn't going to be as accurate anymore without it.
Well, we appreciate your eyes and attention to detail as well, though. Thank you, Zoe. All right. During the first week of President Trump's second term, he proposed no tax on tips. This morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent echoed those promises, suggesting that tariffs could offset the impact of eliminating taxes on tips. So let's take a listen.
The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all of those immediately.
CBS News reporter Andres Gutierrez has the story from Las Vegas, a city where workers largely depend on tips.
Service industry workers who rely on tips are asking lawmakers to cut the politics and deliver. Right now, the issue is a bit of a tug of war where politicians all agree in principle that tips shouldn't be taxed, but they're fighting over the fine print and how to pay for it. Nevada Congressman Stephen Horsford has introduced the TIPS Act. It would wipe out taxes on tips, and it would also end the $2.13 subminimum wage. His bill also caps the benefit at $112,000, so bonuses couldn't be considered tips and white-collar jobs. And there's also another proposed bill by Nevada Senators Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Master that kills the taxes but ends up leaving the wage alone. The White House insists that the tariffs will end up covering the cost for the tax break. In a statement, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told me the president is working closely with Congress to get this done, and, quote, hopefully Democrats will use some common sense for once and support these popular policies. The House and Ways Committee does open for debate in the next 2 weeks. And so the best case scenario here is that servers will see a bigger bump in pay in their checks by the summer. The worst case scenario is that this pledge stays just a talking point. I'm Andres Gutierrez. Now back to you.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney claims victory in the country's election. His fiery speech and message to Trump next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Canada's Liberal Party is celebrating after Mark Carney won the race for Prime Minister. Just a few months ago, Conservatives seemed likely to take control. The turnaround is seen as a reaction to President Trump's tariffs and comments about Canada becoming the 51st state seemingly influenced voters. Carney responded to those comments in his victory speech, so let's take a listen to that.
America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Carney went on to say that Canadians are over the shock of the American betrayal, but he would work with President Trump. Meantime, President Trump has embraced cryptocurrency and promised to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the planet. Just days before taking office, he launched a Memecoin. CBS News confirmed explains it in our TikTok tube.
Days before his inauguration, President Trump dropped a Memecoin. What is a Memecoin? It's a crypto token linked to a celebrity, popular trend, or image. Unlike Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, they could be a flash in the pan, quickly losing popularity and value. When the official Trump meme was announced, thousands of people rushed to buy it. The Trump token eventually rose from around $7 to about $75. Now it's trading at less than half of that. Though the Trump Memecoin emphasizes that these tokens are not intended as an investment opportunity, just an expression of support, many people who bought in at these higher prices may never see their money back. So what's this mean for Trump? Often meme coins cost nearly nothing to mint, but their creators can control how they're distributed. As of now, only 20% of Trump tokens have been released into circulation. Their documentation says that 80% will be held by Trump-related entities. The remainder will be unlocked over the next 3 years. When those tokens are released, Trump and those entities can sell them off. Their website says they'll receive trading revenue as well. Now, these coins could go up in value, but experts from former Obama advisors to Trump supporters have raised alarm. Some point out the tokens are on multiple exchanges and could be purchased by foreign nationals or anyone who just wants to show more support for Trump. And the Trump family didn't just stop with one meme coin. 2 days after the Trump meme coin was released, Melania, another meme coin tied to the now First Lady, was also revealed. That meme coin has lost around 80% of its peak value, which is bad news for buyers, but potentially not so bad news for the Trumps, who stand to make a profit on these meme coins for years to come.
The CBS News confirmed team has much more on their social accounts. That's on TikTok and on Instagram. Be sure to follow them online if you're not already. The only black all-female unit to serve in Europe during World War II was presented with the Congressional Gold Medal today. The 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion was responsible for clearing out a 3-year backlog of mail sent to American service members. The medal was presented to the son of the late unit commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early. Let's take a listen.
One letter or package going out on average every 0.4 of a second. No computers, no optical scanners, no sorting machines, all done by hand. These soldiers exemplified determination in the face of adversity and demonstrated the ability to go beyond what was thought to be possible.
In all, they sorted through a 17 million piece backlog of mail. Only 2 of the 900 women who served are still alive today. America Decides with Major Garrett is next with continuing coverage on President Trump's 100 days in office. Major spoke to a group of Republican and Democratic voters on how they're grading the president on his second term. That's coming up on America Decides. You're watching CBS News 24/7.